We begin today with news from the Vatican. Pope Francis dead at age 88. It was kind of shocking to wake up to, even though we knew he was not in good health. He had double pneumonia and been hospitalized for some 5 weeks in mid-February. I mean, we knew he wasn't doing that well, but it seemed like he was past the worst of it and maybe was getting a little better, or at least on the road toward getting a little better. And then Cardinal Kevin Farrell somberly came out this morning and stated at 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. There's no official cause of death released as of now, but as I said, he's been suffering from these chronic lung issues. And then beginning in February, he was in the hospital for some 38 days with these respiratory issues. Amazingly, you've seen this maybe by now, just yesterday, he appeared in his wheelchair in like the back of the Pope Mobile. I don't know what that is. I'm not exactly sure of the vehicle. On Easter Sunday. Look at that. It's kind of amazing in St. Peter's Square. And one of the last people to meet with Pope Francis was Vice President J.D. Vance. Pretty incredibly. The Vice President had a brief meeting with the Pontiff yesterday where the pair exchanged Easter greetings and gifts. Mr. Vance telling Pope Francis he prays for him daily. Watch.
I know you've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health. Pray for you every day. God bless you.
Io prego per lei ogni giorno, che Dio la benedica. Grazie.
Happy Easter.
Wow. Pretty extraordinary. This Pope was elected Pope in March of 2013 after the shock resignation of Pope Benedict. No popes resign. They just don't do it. The first Pope, Francis from Latin America, first ever. Can you believe that, given how Catholic Latin America is? He was our first Pope from there. And Pope Francis immediately jolted energy and enthusiasm into the church. He was a Jesuit. He was a little bit more progressive. And this got a lot of people excited. Many people thought the church had gone too hardcore, though he stood by some traditional things like an all-male papacy and celibacy, among other things. The church's stance on abortion, which people are kidding themselves if they want the Catholic Church to amend. But this is what we hear from young progressives within the Catholic Church. Okay, good luck with that. Maybe we could get, I guess you can still have priests who come to the church married. Like you can become a priest after having been married, that is, at least, and having like children. But you cannot enter the priesthood and then get married. That's just, anyway. Here's Pope Francis's first appearance as Pope on the balcony of the Vatican. Wow. It's always a sight to behold, right? He was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, where his mother hoped he would become a doctor. But just before his 17th birthday, he paused in front of the Basilica of St. Joseph and later recounted he, quote, felt like someone grabbed me from the inside and took him into the confessional. Right there, he said, I knew I had to be a priest. His mother evidently was upset. He would not become a doctor. But he said, quote, I'm going to study the medicine of the soul. Can you imagine? And then he went on to become the Pope. It's incredible. Pope Francis moved the church in a leftward direction, no question, and away from some of the more divisive issues within the church. As I mentioned, he did not focus that much on abortion, but he didn't change the stance. Homosexuality, shifting its emphasis to global problems like climate change, poverty, and he was very big on migration. He clashed with President Trump over Trump's immigration policy, saying before the 2016 election that a person who thinks only about building walls and not of building bridges is not Christian. This is why he was controversial amongst, in particular, a lot of Christians here in America who tend to be more conservative. The Trump campaign responded by pointing out that the Vatican is surrounded by walls. We saw that exact thing happen a couple of weeks ago, where once again, he was ripping on Trump's policies when it comes to immigration. And once again, we had Tom Homan coming out and saying, my response as a lifelong Catholic to this Pope is that the Vatican has walls. Why is that? Ahead of the 2024 election, the Pope declined to say whether people should vote for Trump or Harris, merely urging people to choose the lesser evil according to their conscience. But in a letter to U.S. bishops in February, Pope Francis wrote that mass deportation, quote, damages the dignity of many men and women and of entire families and places them in a state of particular vulnerability and defenselessness, unquote. Now, look, this is the problem, because not only is that the church's official stance, but the church has been participating in getting immigrants here and then finding them housing and helping them stay here, irrespective of the fact that they're here illegally. And Pope Francis didn't have to deal with that. You know, and it's caused a lot of us in the Catholic Church to wonder what exactly we're donating toward on Sunday. It really does. It's one thing if you want to help support your priests, make sure that they're well taken care of, make sure your church is well taken care of, make sure it's got flowers on the altar for Easter Mass. But funding illegals coming into the country, they're not all upstanding Catholics. And, you know, a lot of us who are Catholic but lean right felt this tug of war going on between the Pope's messaging and what he wanted us to believe were, you know, deep Catholic teachings and what we understand as Americans who are watching our citizens murdered in the streets by these people to be true. Anyway, it's on a day like this, you pray for the loss of the Pope and for a very obviously holy man who was the leader of the Catholic Church, who had enormous challenges on him and pressures on him. And, you know, the church is very political too, especially at the top. It's such a really interesting organization. And then also you look at the messaging and you try to understand how he could so misunderstand somebody who is our leader here, our political leader here. And the reason President Trump is so devoted to getting rid of these people who Pope Francis just looked at as vulnerable and defenseless. Well, you know who was vulnerable and defenseless? Laken Riley. You know, it's like, I wish I could have gotten to talk to the pontiff about it. I really do. Wish I could have had an interview with him where we talked about things like that. I'm sure he would have had nothing but empathy for those killed by these illegals. But that's the problem in part with, you know, the Catholic Church and its approach toward this issue. You know, no church is going to satisfy its constituents across the board. This one didn't. Pope Francis didn't, but unquestionably a good, decent, honorable, holy, loving man. And President Trump, for his part, was very gracious in the wake of the news today, posting on Truth Social, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis. May God bless him and all who loved him." Now, a public viewing for Pope Francis could take place as early as Wednesday, and then a conclave. This is such a big deal whenever this happens. I don't know if for our younger viewers, you may not have seen it, but I will never forget when we were on the air at Fox and Shepard Smith said that he said the Pope had died when the Pope hadn't died. That was it. I guess I will forget because my details are somewhat fuzzy. But we were waiting. It was like the Pope was sick and we were waiting to see if he had died. Anyway, he got that wrong and it turned out to be a huge deal. We covered these things at Fox News like they were presidential elections. And so they're going to go through this process now, the conclave, where they choose his successor. The 120 cardinals will gather. They say this typically begins between 15 and 20 days after the papal office becomes vacant. So call it 2 weeks from now or thereabouts, we can expect to see, they had to actually have a good write-up today in the Daily Mail about it. 120 cardinals behind closed doors. If you saw the movie Conclave, you know, where the Pope turns out to be intersex, spoiler alert, then you have seen a refresher. But this article pointing out some differences. In real life, you will not have somebody coming out and briefing the media while the process is underway. And in real life, anybody who did that would face excommunication for that offense. You're not allowed to talk to the outside world while the cardinals are in the conclave, nor are they allowed to make pacts with the other cardinals who are voting. Nor, they say, would a dead pope ever be allowed to be swarmed over by priests, nuns, and officials, nor laid out in his pajamas. They say in the real world, The Chamberlain of the Holy Roman Church declares a pope to be dead in the presence of the papal master of ceremonies and a handful of other members of the papal household. 9 days of mourning are then declared, in which the body of the late pope will lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica. It will be at least 15 days before the conclave. And then the cardinals, though, are no longer physically locked in a building until they've made their decision, but they will stay at a guest house within the Vatican's walls known as St. Martha's House, where they'll have the services of cooks and housekeepers plus 2 doctors, one of whom is a surgeon. And, many of these are old guys. And then they will walk daily in their blue cassocks and red sashes to the Papal Palace or the Sistine Chapel, where the voting will actually take place. They will not be allowed to read newspapers. It's like being a sequestered jury. Access radio, TV, or the internet. They'll not be allowed to send or receive any kind of messaging to or from the outside world. And they could be there for some time. The longest in history lasted 34 months. Good gracious. Back in 1271. In modern times, none has lasted longer than the 5 days it took in 1922. The conclave to elect Pope Francis lasted just 2 days. This is from this Daily Mail piece. No firm procedure for the multiple ballots, which are likely to be held. The conclave will determine its own procedure. If a candidate receives 2/3 majority of the votes, that should be it. And then when they have the next pontiff, they will blow white smoke up the chimney. Black smoke indicates no decision has been made. Good luck to them. This is a big decision. We've never had an American pope, but I'm voting for Cardinal Dolan. I hope they get behind him. It'd be great to have. We had one from the Americas, this pope, Latin America. We haven't had an American. Would be amazing if we did. And Cardinal Dolan is just the best man you could ever hope for the job. An inspirational leader, brilliant. It's just, all the knowledge you could ever want in a church leader, and a man of the people, somebody who can inspire working class and elites alike, somebody who knows how to talk to people in a language they can understand, and just an all-around dear man. We've got Catholic radio on SiriusXM. He does a show every Christmas. He has one, and I was on it a couple years ago. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a pope who had a SiriusXM radio show? It'd be fantastic for Sirius. They'd be so psyched. In any event, prayers with all of the men who will make this new decision and with the one who becomes the next pontiff. It's a big responsibility. You've heard about tariffs recently, plus inflation, supply chain disruptions. It's a lot, but there is a silver lining that most people missed. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from the tariff talk. The administration preserved the ability to diversify into precious metals. If you are concerned about your savings, consider a free consultation with a Birch Gold precious metals specialist. The first step is to text MK to 989898 and receive your free no-obligation info kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax-sheltered account. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of pocket. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of thankful customers, consider texting MK to 989898. Again, text MK to 989898 to claim your free info kit right now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.